Public Safety Committee meeting. Shh. Good morning. Today is Tuesday, October 6th. I'm the chairman of the committee, Mitchell Englander. I want to welcome you all for coming this morning. I really appreciate it. And welcome my colleagues as well. Councilmember Buscaino, welcome. Mike Bonin. We have a quorum, and we're going to go ahead and jump in the agenda. We have a very lengthy agenda this morning, so I'm going to get through it. I'm going to open it first out of order with general public comment cards, and I'm going to have a minute for general public comment because we do have a very lengthy agenda, as well as another member I want to get to as well, so he can get off to his meetings as well. Thank you, Paul Koretz, for being here. So I'm going to take your number first, but I'm going to get through general public comment first. Is there anybody here on general public comment? I've got 2 cards for general public comment. Just the 2, Wayne and Dr. Williams. If you want to both go ahead and come on up. No other members for general public comment? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close general public comment after the 2 of you. That'll conclude general public comment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, again, welcome our special guest from Encino, Mr. Paul Koretz. Yes, anyway, so no one Mitchell Englander for the County Board of Supervisors.
It's general public comment. You can save that for council. Stick to the Public Safety Committee.
If you win the seat, then we're going to have a special election, and we don't want to have the taxpayers paying for a special election, do we?
This is going to be your second warning. You're going to stick to the purview of this committee.
Mr. City Attorney, is a special election contingent on city business? Yes, it is. And we don't want to have unfilled seats for special elections. So when somebody runs for office, as a matter of public safety...
Your time is up.
As a matter of public safety...
warning. You're not under the purview of...
As a matter of public safety and as the oath of office, as an officer of the law, as a reserve police officer, somebody should not run for city council when they intend to run for another office at taxpayer expense.
Thank you.
That's illegal.
Dr. Williams, thank you. Always great to see you again, Wayne.
Good morning. Dr. Tom Williams from LA 32 Neighborhood Council. Issue, fire clearance. Yeah, we had a rain. It's not going to be enough, especially next year. So the LA Fire Department should come up with a strategy as to brush clearance. It's been a mess, and we're going to have more problems next year. So they have some time from these rains now till the brush returns, and it will return several times over by August of next year. I'd highly recommend that the LA Fire Department considers having a penalty, financial liability for anyone that does not clear their brush and that there is a fire based upon that brush, because I've seen helicopter fire drops in people's backyards, especially in the Sunland Tahunga area. Maybe not in the port area, but in our area, we have brush. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, that concludes the general public comment. We're going to go ahead and take items 1 and 2 together. Colleagues, we have a number of items on consent first. Let me see, we've got some cards, so. All right, items that I wish to take on consent, if we could, colleagues, are items 4, 5, 6, 8. Sorry, 8, I believe we have a card on. 8, there's a card on 8. So, items 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23 are all donations, as well as 25, 26, 27, and 28. Okay, moved? Second. All right, those are taken on consent and approved.
And may
if
I
those
repeat
have-
those two just to make sure?
Okay, yes, those are 4, 5, and 6.
Yes.
Well, let me do it, 4, 5, and 6, 9 and 10, 13 and 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 25, 26, 27, and 28. We have cards on 3, 8, 12, 15, 24, 29. We're going to hear item 7, 1 and 2, cards on 11, and item 30. So, okay. All right, thank you. Those are approved. Without objection, that'll be the order. All right, let's go ahead and take items 1 and 2. I do have 2 council members here. Before, we do have cards as well, but I want to ask Councilmember Koretz and Councilmember Rue if they want to go ahead and speak first, or do you want to hear the couple cards first? Cards first? Okay. Okay, on items 1 and 2, we've got Dr. Williams on item 2. Please come on up.
What happened to 1?
You didn't have a card on 1. You just have a card on 2.
Okay, for item number 2. Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, also Sierra Club Climate Change. Does the department really
Oh, you
know
do have a
what-
card. You have a card on 1 too. So go ahead and speak to both. I'm taking them both together anyway. So go ahead.
Okay. Does the department really know what El Nino will bring? I don't think so, really, because this is a very different El Nino from most. So, where are the priority areas? What are we going to do once they do come? How do we know that they're coming? How do we know what's going to happen to the channels? I'd highly recommend that the department start installing, CCTV on major critical flood areas. Oh, by the way, I was part of the steering committee on the flood insurance issues. So we have Arroyo Seco. We're quite concerned about Sunland Tujunga also, and even Bayona Creek, because El Nino rains are very different from the normal Mediterranean winter rains, and we're going to get hammered, but we're not prepared. Thank you.
Wayne?
I have another minute?
You do. You have 1 on 1 and 2. Did you wish to go back to back? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's enough.
Okay.
Yes, again, I'd like to thank Councilman Rue and Koretz for coming here this morning on such an urgent matter. Now, we don't have a drought anymore. Now, we don't have global warming anymore. Now it's El Nino. Then next week, it'll be back to the drought. Then it'll be back to El Nino. Then it'll be back to global warming. Then it'll be back to climate change. You don't know what's going to happen. Yesterday it rained. The rain came from the sky and fell down and washed away the dirt. A little bit of rain. I mean, this is not a monsoon. I mean, we're not in India. We're in Los Angeles. We don't get monsoons. There's not going to be any problems. There's not going to be any tragedy. We're just going to get a little rain. Everybody relax. Take 1 and 2, table it. Everybody calm down. Let's everybody take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. We're going to live.
All right. That concludes all the comment cards on 1 and 2. I'm going to ask the council members to please come on up. Good morning. Thank you both for coming. Truly appreciate it. Thanks for putting in these motions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilman Bonin, for your El Nino motion as well and collaborating with my office. And thank you to committee members this morning for hearing this item. And thank you for offering us the opportunity to speak. I'm going to be very brief because if there was ever a topic that deserved all-inclusive expert analysis from our emergency responders, this is it. I would only like to say that unlike many of the issues that cross our desks on a daily basis, we have an opportunity today to proactively, instead of reactively, and begin preparing the neighborhoods we serve for what is expected to be a strong El Nino season. Over the past few weeks, We've seen the impacts of what 1 or 2 rainy days can do to our storm drains, our backlog of dead trees, and our drought-weakened hillsides. Proactive public safety here could save our citizens and our city from unnecessary hardship during El Nino. I look forward to hearing from the departments in attendance and working with each of you over the next few months to ensure our communities are safe and secure. Thank you.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and members. And I thank you for taking up this item. I also thank Mr. Bonin for his work on this item. As part of keeping an eye on climate change, I have my staff track extreme storm events around the world. And when we started doing this, we did it monthly. Now we do it more than weekly because things are happening constantly as a result of climate change. Just in 2015, there have been record-breaking floods in Southeast Africa, Argentina, Chile, Australia, Houston, Oklahoma, here in Riverside in July, the flash floods in Utah, which killed 16 people in September, and what the news called apocalyptical floods in Turkey and Greece last week. This week, floodwaters in the French Riviera killed at least 19 people. In South Carolina, there are at least 9 dead today. The governor called theirs a 1,000-year flood event with more than 24 inches of rain coming down in Mount Pleasant, nearly 20 inches in the areas around Charleston. The mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, with a population of only 133,000, says that he's expecting damages to be in the billions of dollars. And so when the Los Angeles Times calls our pending El Nino Godzilla, it gets my attention in a way that it might not have in previous years. My constituent, Mr. Spindler's lack of concern to the contrary, I think this could be quite serious. And I asked to co-present with Mr. Rue because I'm more than a little concerned about what would happen in terms of the kind of damage that would be caused to our friends and neighbors, not just in property, but possibly in lives, especially in the hillsides, which are prone to it for a number of reasons. And so I have a few questions I think we should be looking at. First, have we identified the areas and communities most prone to mudslides, especially after a lengthy drought and after we've been trimming a lot of the weeds and removing our turf? That could be even more of a problem. Do we have an overall evacuation plan, especially in the hillsides, and safe centers for people, and how many can we accommodate? And perhaps most importantly, what if entire neighborhoods are trapped and that people are calling 911 and they're just busy for hours and vehicles can't get to them? What's our plan? So have we looked into those different scenarios? Can we look into them? What if water and power are cut off, which are very possible? What are the safest and riskiest routes in the hills? I think all those things should be looked at, and I appreciate this body for taking a look at all those issues and making sure we're ready when it happens. So thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, and I really appreciate not only both of you coming forward and taking the time this morning, but each and every day in emergency preparedness, emergency disaster preparedness and awareness, and what we can and can't do and what we should be doing in educating the public, bringing our various departments and experts together, looking at best practices. This is very, very serious. And in fact, we just had an emergency preparedness fair this past weekend where thousands of people attended. And take it quite seriously. So with that, we also have one of the committee members who put in a motion on this, Councilmember Mike Bond. I would like to turn it over to you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Englander. Thanks to Mr. Vu and Mr. Koretz for their work on this as well. But really the thanks go to the departments that have done so much work on this. Even before we initiated it, I know a lot of folks in the various agencies were aware of what was going to be happening with El Nino and began to prepare for it. So I'm eager to hear their thoughts and get a sense of what resources they have, what resources they need. This is an issue that is extremely concerning to me. not only do I represent hillside areas, and Mr. Koretz very articulately explained what the risk is in the hillside areas, but I also represent low-lying coastal areas. Places in Venice and Playa del Rey are actually below sea level and have had extreme flooding in the past. I'm also particularly concerned about the impact on our storm drain and our sanitation system, whether it can handle the kind of storm we're looking at, and whether we could have sewage backups and sort of really extreme situations. I'm also aware from when I worked for Ruth Galanter, her last year she spent in the San Fernando Valley in what is CD6, Ms. Martinez's district, and I remember when we had not particularly dramatic rains, there are some intersections, I think San Fernando and Truxton and a few others that really get horribly, horribly flooded, and I'm concerned about what might happen there as well. So I'm really eager to hear what the departments have to say. I want to particularly thank Sanitation for hosting their council office outreach session earlier this week that I know a number of council offices attended. And as they come up, I hope that they will speak to not just what the emergency plans are, but what the outreach will be and the education to get folks engaged on what they need to be doing, and talk about what the deployment of staffing will be and where departments are working together and where there might be some gaps that need our help to fill. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. And council members, I want to welcome you again and ask if you'd like to stay and ask the departments any questions. You certainly can do that and join us in that conversation and dialogue. I know your schedules are very busy and preparing for the rest of the day as well, but I'll open that up to you and offer that this is very important. So I appreciate that. And with that, let's go ahead and bring up all the departments. I know there are many here from Fire Department, Department of Water and Power, Rec and Parks, EMD, Sanitation, Street Services, CAO, and I believe there is a presentation as well.
Good morning, Adel Hashkhalil. I'm the Assistant General Manager for LA Sanitation. I'll get this kicked off, and what you have before you is a report from Sanitation on our preparedness and response to the wet weather event, including the El Nino, predicted El Nino. You should have copies of the report that all council offices should have, and it's also on the records of this committee. Along what we have is a PowerPoint presentation that's available to you, and we have some communication and outreach plan that we put together. This is not the end of our preparedness. This is what we're here also is to get input from you and continue to develop and prepare. We heard yesterday from, as Councilman Bonin mentioned, we met with the staff from council offices, and we will reach out to each council office to really specifically discuss the issues and the concerns for the council office and how we can work closely with them. So if you can allow me for a few minutes, let me just walk you through our preparedness and what we're looking at, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues, and then we will go into a discussion and dialogue quickly. LA Sanitation manages is proud of our commitment to protecting public health and the environment. That's our mission. That's what we do every day. And LA Sanitation has three systems that we manage. One is the wastewater system, the clean water system, including the sewer conveyance and treatment. We have a separate system, which is a storm drain system, including the catch basins and the drains that goes to the waterways, the LA River, Barna Creek, and then to the ocean. And we have our solid resources program that we also manage. All these play a big role in our preparedness and response to the wet weather event. Just to tell you, we have prepared our facilities. All our facilities are ready to receive the rain. All our catch basins have been cleaned. Our storm drains have been inspected. Our debris basins have been inspected. Our wastewater facilities have been inspected and prepared and are ready. We have been having a lot of reviews, tabletop exercises, discussions to ensure that our communication internally is working well, and we're doing a great job. So let me talk about the the wastewater system, the city has 6,700 miles of sewers that we manage every day, and that goes from a small sewer of 8 inches all the way up to 150 inches in diameter. That goes all the way from the San Fernando Valley all the way down to Playa del Rey and the ocean. Those are cleaned regularly. We have a preventive maintenance program to ensure they are clear of debris, of grease, roots, etc. And that's something that we do regularly, and those have been inspected. The wastewater treatment plants also are prepared. The biggest issue that we are concerned with is power. Without power, we can't operate our facilities, so most of these facilities have dual power feeds, and also we have a power generation on site, along with the pump stations. Those also are of a concern. We have done our preventive maintenance and inspection, but our major pump stations have dual feeds, and they have backup power generation with fuel on site, including the Venice pump plant in the Venice area that has a dual feed and also has on-site power generation. We feel comfortable that our system is able to handle the heavy rain. However, the sewer system is designed for a 10-year storm. And what that means is that the amount there's 140,000 maintenance hole covers in the streets. And anytime we have rain, these maintenance hole covers allow water to go in. And a system is designed to have rainwater goes into the sewer system, although they're separate systems. And we designed a system to handle wet weather flow. And we usually see a doubling of the flow during wet weather, and we should be able to handle that. However, any more extreme conditions, especially if any of our facilities go offline, can be a concern. What we are looking for is to do everything we can to minimize overflows in neighborhoods and communities, sewage overflows. And I think we have a plan to ensure that we will take as much flow in our treatment plants to minimize and protect the system downstream. Over the last 15 years, we've invested a lot of our ratepayers' money in upgrading our sewer system. We've done a great job, and we have put in a system such as the East Central Interceptor Sewer, Northeast Interceptor Sewer, upgrades at treatment plants that we've had to ensure the system can handle the flow. But if we have extreme wet weather event, we have looked at where can we minimize the impact? And we're looking at if we think we have modeling, we have flow monitors across the system to know what's happening. We have simulated the system. So if we believe that there is a condition that may potentially cause an overflow, what we'll do is first go ahead and take a lot more flow at the treatment plants, such as Tillman in the San Fernando Valley or Ellie Glendale and other places, to minimize flow going into the sewer system. And what we're going to do is prioritize, is what we're going to look at is can we discharge into the Ellie River water that has high turbidity or have sewage overflows in the system. We're going to go in with the safer conditions and have the potential of high turbidity in the water instead of having overflows in the system. So be assured that we're going to be there ensuring that the system should be handling itself, but also we'll do everything to minimize anything that under extreme conditions. But the public can help us, and I want to say something that the residents are our partners. We are asking them during heavy rains is to conserve using water, and people ask why. And they don't see the relationship. Yes, we need them to conserve water, such as minimize the use of laundry and putting water down the drain, because we want to conserve the capacity in the sewer system to the heavy inflow from the sewer system. We also are talking to our partners in fire department, emergency management department, police department to prevent anybody from using the sewer maintenance hole covers as a way to drain an area, because that initially will have a flooding, but then if we start opening maintenance holes to drain a area, it can become a bigger issue that we don't want to deal with.
Just real quick, and because I know I want to get through to everybody else as well. Do you have a media communications plan detailing all of those various things?
Yes.
So as this unfolds, because people aren't going to pay attention to it now, that the media can then say, okay, here, that's really a lot of what they cover is they're going to have folks out there on scene showing the flooding, but the tips on what you should be doing will be timely to put that information out. Is
Yes.
in the can, ready to go?
Yes, and you should have a copy with you as a communicate. Besides, actually, there's actually handouts that look like this. These are canned messages that we're putting out as a
So
communication
you have press
plan.
releases ready to go?
Sure, everything is ready to go. We're going to be using the social media, Twitters, plus also we're going to work with our partners in emergency management to do notify LA. But let me finish one more thing on the storm drain system. The catch basins, we have about 40,000 catch basins in the city. Those are the ones that have the screens in front of them, and we have cleaned all of them. All of them are free of debris. During the rain, we have high priority locations that we're going to be inspecting. We're going to have crews dispatched during the rain across the city. We need to ensure that all the areas that are what we call potential areas that may flood are there. And we're asking the public to minimize the calls to the hotline, the 311, to urgent and emergency calls to ensure that we are receiving the calls that we need to respond to right away. And our staff will be out there. Our debris basins up in the hillside have been inspected and cleaned. We have 63 of them, and they're ready to go. And our operations staff will be dispatched across the city. And we're working with our partners in the county of Los Angeles to ensure that any communication, including discharge it into the ocean, are clear of debris to ensure there's no backup and no flooding in communities, that the system is working fine.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jim Featherstone, General Manager of the Emergency Management Department. We've been monitoring El Nino for several months and working with our internal and external stakeholders. In fact, we've been looking at a greater phenomenon called arc storm, which is an atmospheric river. We've been monitoring that for 6 years. So us getting ready for El Nino was just a matter of being a little more focused in terms of a timely event. Our conversations, our discussions with the National Weather Service up in Oxnard, which is the office which looks over LA, they have a 95% confidence that we will have a strong El Nino event. They're looking at December through February, where we'll have particularly high levels of rain. It'll come in either short, intense storms or prolonged storms. The impact on the city will be multiple storms with continuous rain, coastal region erosion, large wave action, flooding and debris and mud flow in areas, especially those areas that have been denuded due to potential fires, or in our efforts to conserve water where we don't have the plant growth that we've seen before. EMD routinely reviews and updates and approves the emergency response plans for the city. 14 of those annexes actually are or have already been done, reviewed within the last 2 years, and will be applicable to an El Nino event. So the existing plans are there. The messaging, you mentioned messaging. On November 9th, we will actually start the full force citywide messaging campaign with all of our partners. A lot of our key messaging has actually come from sanitation. Their messaging is up right now. EMD is putting their messaging up right now. So we will begin to not trickle their messaging out, but their messaging will go out on spot sites through social media, websites, et cetera. But the big push in terms of our messaging over time will start November 9th. We learned a lot from the Carmageddon event, where we essentially out-messaged the event. We got the civic compliance and support. We look to do the same thing with El Nino. We hosted the first of 4 responder and supporter-specific workshops. 2 weeks ago, we had over 80 people in attendance. We'll hold 3 more of those. In addition, we're working with each council district to hold 1, if not more, town hall meetings in each of the 15 council districts to deal with specific issues. We're looking specifically, like in CD6, the Sepulveda Basin and flooding, LA River encampments. Anytime we have flooding, a notification of flooding, even up in the mountains, we work with Central Bureau to go and notify the homeless population in and around the LA River. CD11, the coastal region, Adele just talked about the runoff. Also flooding in low-lying areas. The inundation mapping that we did for tsunami will actually help us in terms of potential flooding areas in the low-lying areas along the coast. Also landslides and mudslides along Pacific Coast Highway and the Santa Monica Mountains and the hills adjacent there. CD12, we're looking at street flooding. Adele talked about the occluding of the storm drain system. One of the things we've been working with sanitation about is using maps where areas that historically flooded intersections or larger areas of the community and overlaying the trash pickup routes to possibly suspending or delaying trash collection just prior to a heavy rain, because as you've seen before, all of us have seen the trash cans in the gutter floods, trash can tips over, now you got debris, and literally a trash bag can flood a whole intersection, so to speak. So those are some of the practical things we're looking at. In CD13, the Arroyo Seco, debris flows in that area, hillside debris flows, and also the Arroyo encampments. And in CD15, again, low-lying coastal areas prone to flooding, and our tsunami inundation mapping has given us a perspective there. The LA River, street and freeway flooding, and also contaminated floodwaters from upriver. We've looked at a lot of things we've had in place, and we've just basically focused them and marshaled them right now in terms of what we're going to use in terms of attacking the this, I'm going to say tsunami, the El Nino issue. The National Weather Service is saying December through February. Like I said, we start the Messaging Over Time campaign the first week of November, and we also have messages canned, what we call messages just in time, so specific focused messaging. With the mass notification system, Notify LA, which we've been doing a marketing campaign for the last 2 years on, we'll use that specifically in areas that have are historically flooded areas, and also areas that in the moment have acute risk depending on the rainflow.
Thank you, Mr. Featherstone.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Go ahead, sir. Fire Department. Good morning.
Good morning, committee members. Jeff Dapper, Commander of Disaster Response Section. I'll address my concerns to the whole continuum of the planning, preparation, mitigation, and response. I know the motion talked mostly about the outreach, but I'm going to cover everything in the remarks. So, preparation for the anticipated heavy rainfall to the El Nino system. LAFDs be taking several steps to enhance our response readiness and interoperability with other city agencies and community stakeholders. Actions will include the following: the designation of an El Nino planning officer and deputy planning officer. It will be the duty of these members to keep abreast of developments regarding extreme weather forecasts, attending meetings with concerned stakeholders, draft memos for dissemination for department staff, and coordinate training as needed. DOC, EOC over the next several weeks, the Department of Operations Center will focus its weekly training block on El Nino planning. Draft memos again, and they'll have 3 or 4 scenarios. All the scenarios will involve DOC activation operation in advance of heavy impending rains. The next level of DOC activation is operations objectives during heavy rains, flooding, evacuation, swiftwater rescue, debris flow, power outages. And the last one, DOC operations objectives, supportive recovery following significant rainfall. Training will commence next week when Team 1 attends the 0730 DOC EOC meeting, so we're already starting our preparation. In August, when it was 105 outside, disaster response ordered 200,000 sandbags and 50 tons of sand. We're going to have those pre-filled, palletized, and loaded on flatbeds, disseminated, ready for rapid response. We'll also have them out to every local fire station. So instead of filling sandbags, residents and the members of the fire stations can start immediately bagging rather than delay that diking. We have K-rails that will be loaded on those those flatbeds also, rapid dissemination. The K-rails, after they're loaded on, will be stayed. We have approximately 3 flatbeds with the K-rails and the sandbags. We can get them out to the areas of 74s, first in the North Valley areas. But we identified post-Sayer incident that we know that were problems after the rains came, where we had the mud debris flow. So we're not caught flat-footed with this. There was already extensive preparation being made that we dealt with post-Sayer incident. We're in a little better shape now because we do have some vegetation. We've had several grass crops, so the hillsides are not denuded. In a lot of areas, we don't have that post-burn that we dealt with before. We're going to assess the status of available portable power generators. I know we have 4 with the FEMA that are very large, that we can at least keep our main fire station headquarters for the 4 bureaus up and running so they can continue emergency response operations. We have our swiftwater teams going into flood control channels, remarking anchor points, identifying drainages, validating rescue points to make sure they're still active and accessible. We want to make sure that they're swept pre-incident, pre-rain. In other words, when the rains events come, we usually can go through and make sure the flood control channels are swept, thereby eliminating the need for the swiftwater rescue. We always see that we have some of those still occur, but we're trying to minimize those. We're going to identify, one of the things we learned being a fire department, we want to mitigate. So when we see the mud flow, we want to remove the mud flow, but we realize there's other members of the city family that help us identify when we should and when we shouldn't do those. And we learned that again post-Sayer. We had Speaking to the point of somebody that doesn't think this is going to be a significant event, it doesn't require that. We had a minor vegetation fire on Forest Lawn Drive. Subsequent rainfall that put 2 feet of mud across Parham on Forest Lawn Boulevard. We took 10 loaders out to remove the mud to clear it up because we wanted to free up that traffic. BOE soils engineer came out and said that's called the toe of the slide. You got to wait for that to solidify, otherwise you might bring 22 feet down. So learning experience for us that we know that we have other city family members that will assist us when the mud debris flow does occur.
Do we have heavy equipment pre-deployed for dozers and those, and have them at as many locations as we need? And are we short on that equipment as well? Is there anything we should do temporarily to bring in more equipment and prepare for that? Do we have a laundry list of items of requested need, if you will?
The fire department has heavy equipment, but normally street services, and I'll certainly let them speak to it, street services does pre-deploy based upon the mud.
We're not going to be able to get them around the city.
No,
and okay.
We collectively, between street services, rec and parks, which we came to our surprise that they do have equipment available. We also have front loaders. We do have dozers that will be pre-positioned prior to inclement weather. We already have staging points for those. We've already surveyed the areas on the LFD mud and debris flow maps. Post-SARE incident, we GPSed every structure that was in a drainage within the way so we could readily identify those and immediately start search and rescue after. So that work has already been done. We've developed an information package to be disseminated to CERT volunteers, disaster awareness course recipients, and others versus email. So the public safety outreach will be extensive. It'll be through neighborhood councils, homeowners association, whatever the other city families are doing. There'll be a collaborative effort to get that outreach done to make sure that everybody's in the loop and understands the dangers. It's not going to take a lot. It doesn't need to be a 100-year storm. It just needs to be right after in an intense short period. That's why when we have SWOPR deployments, there's a matrix already developed. We put our teams out based on the rainfall. We collect and disseminate maps and other GIS support resources from other city agencies to field bureaus. These will include flood control maps and other relevant maps. We're going to complete the Bureau Area Command Location Guidebook and distribution to field offices. We establish contacts with relevant city agencies and private sector groups. Participate in work group committees, conference calls, and meetings around the El Nino planning effort. Maintain readiness to deploy command staff and command post vehicles at fixed locations.
Good morning, council members. Ron Lorenzen, Assistant Director, Bureau of Street Services. Good morning. As everybody else has indicated, the Bureau of Street Services has already spent many months preparing for this historic El Nino event. I think that what's happened in Charleston in the last 2 days is a wake-up call as to what possibly could happen here. And we actually have seen these things occur here before. We actually have had some major storm events, particularly back in 1997, when I literally witnessed floodwaters in Ventura Boulevard rise 8 inches within 1 hour. So it can happen here, contrary to some of the testimony that's been presented before this board. The Bureau has already been pre-deployed, as Fireman has indicated, and we're working with the Department of Emergency Preparedness. We are pre-deploying equipment to all of those areas we know. We're not doing it. It's already been done. Those areas that are most prone to flooding, that would be the canyons and the mountainous areas of the city, as well as areas like out in the valley with the Sepulveda Basin, which is one of our key areas of response in the valley when we're responding to these events. As was mentioned earlier by Mr. Englander, the intersections in the valley are a prime concern for us. The valley is very flat, and the valley has many areas prone to flooding. So like the fire department has done, we have K-rails prepared in our yards in the valley, as well in the areas that are close, the yards that are close to the mountainous areas. We have equipment deployed in those areas, particularly in the mountainous areas where our yards are close to the mountains. We have those yards already staffed with equipment and resources. We have checked all of our communication systems to make sure that they are up and running and can be used during a storm event. We look at ourselves as the first response to many of these events. We oftentimes are the first people that actually roll up on a location and then become the agency that's disseminating information, getting the fire department out there, obviously communicating with the emergency management teams to coordinate the response to these events. We also depend a lot on the community to provide us information so we can get out there. Our number one job at the Bureau is to actually secure these events once they occur. We actually are in the recovery mode as well. We assist the fire department and oftentimes are the prime the first response team for removing and recovering these sites. But as the fire department has indicated, you have to be careful. The mudslides particularly are very dangerous, and you have to wait until the Bureau of Engineering comes out there and tells us it's okay to do this. In CD15, the western area through Rancho Palos Verdes is a very big concern for us. We are working with the BOE and with the council office to make sure that we respond to that site appropriately. We're also working with the county. We have many overlaps with the county to make sure that we are coordinating with them to properly respond in those areas that we overlap. I heard trees mentioned. I want to address trees real quickly. Actually, during a storm event, live trees that are heavy foliated are actually more prone to failure from rain because rain actually puts more weight in the canopy of the trees. We are going to be ready for emergency response. All of the teams in urban forestry have already been doing some training regarding responding to emergencies. Unfortunately, we don't get years to respond to an El Nino. We don't have years to plan ahead to be able to perhaps get contractual services ready. We are looking into that we may be able to obtain some emergency contractual services. And we're not sure about that, but we'll try to do that. But we are certainly ready to respond to emergencies. I would just throw in a little caveat here that the best way to alleviate that in the future is by properly maintaining the urban forest from now on. It helps alleviate that potential for problems. But as far as dead trees go, actually in rain events, not quite as much of a problem. Unless we have whole tree failures, once the ground is saturated, trees fail, both dead and alive. But we are definitely ready to respond to that. We have staff strategically placed in those areas in the city that will be the most heavily impacted by these storm events. And our biggest thing is actually being the eyes and ears for everybody else on the street and in securing locations once they occur. We have all of the barricades, cones, K-rails ready to go, plenty of them to use. The Bureau is ready to assist in any way that we can.
Thank you.
So leave me. Good morning. I'm Lisa Hayes with the Office of Emergency Management, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And like our colleagues here, we stand ready for storm response. But we realize that this will be a prolonged storm event, potentially with a lot of additional rain. So we want to make sure that our systems are both prepared, water and power. So we are prepared in terms of mitigating potential threats to our facilities and infrastructure by vegetation, cleanup, debris removal, and working along with our partners to make sure that happens. Our crews are 24/7 in terms of response, and we are augmenting them with additional crews during storm periods, making sure that we have access to tree crews, our street lighting crews, and all hands on deck basically to make sure that power is restored in an efficient manner. We're in the process of updating our contact list for all emergency response personnel, as well as our emergency response facilities and critical infrastructure operators within our systems. We will be involved in storm monitoring along with the Emergency Management Department. We'll be in close connection with them. And according to our adverse weather plans, we will communicate with them anytime there's 10,000 or more customers out. And that will be a phone call to the Emergency Management Department duty officer to advise them of, potential outage issues as well as response estimations or restoration estimations. So we do have pump crews that will be available if we need to dewater our vaults and our infrastructure. So we do stand ready. We have some work to do in terms of making sure that everyone is ready, set, go. So in our 24/7 response, we are pretty confident that we can, be at the helm to restore power and any water issues that may occur.
Great, thank you. Do you want to add anything?
Nothing, just Shram Karagani from also LA Sanitation.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to my colleagues for questions. One thing I wanted to add as well, and I think a big component, first of all, I'm confident that our departments are prepared, but we can't be prepared for everything. And there's always unintended things that happen in the perfect storm, if you will. And just watching the news last night, as you all know, what happened with the flooding in the neighborhood last night from one trash can went down the street and blocked what was supposed to be the storm water capture system for that neighborhood blocked it, and the entire neighborhood flooded. So we can't prepare for everything, but what we can do is really have a communications plan starting now with the public on things they can do. So I would suggest, and Jim, this is probably really right up your alley, meeting with, this is Los Angeles, this is Hollywood. We have in our major news media outlets, meteorologists that are celebrities, if you will, that convening them and bringing them together now might be a great idea, and asking them, as you're talking about the storms coming and as you're talking about even the 100-degree weather that we're supposed to experience in the next couple days, so people aren't thinking that this storm is right around the corner, start plugging this of what you can do at home to prepare, and start working with our local media outlets, in particular our meteorologists that's just what they live and breathe, that this is a very big deal. We need their partnership. So it might behoove us to convene under your shop that kind of meeting for you guys to lead that effort and invite them over to have that discussion and start giving them some of the bullet points that have been put together, not just on what we're doing to prepare as a city, but more importantly, what the public needs to do to prepare on their own. And also, plugging in, again, shelter in place and all of those things that they have to do to prepare. So let me go ahead and open it up to my colleagues. Councilman Mike Bonin first, if I could.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your suggestion. I think that's a good one. It was actually sort of along the lines of what I was going to suggest. I wanted to talk first a few questions from Mr. Featherstone about the outreach. You mentioned that we learned a lot about messaging from Carmageddon.
Yes, sir.
That's true, although Carmageddon was a very short period of time. It was just one weekend, and the message was pretty simple. Don't get in your car, get out of town.
Yes, sir.
This is a long period of time, and the messages are multiple. So in addition to the media approach Mr. Englander recommended, I want to encourage you to try to get as much information on an advance and on a rolling basis to not just council offices, because will help, but and maybe we're the vehicle to get it to the following: neighborhood councils, the local chambers, the neighborhood watches, moms groups, all sorts of the different networks around the city. But at this point, what is the general message you want us to convey?
The general message right now, one, we fall back to our basic messaging, which is we need to be prepared for what we call our maximum of maximums. If a household is prepared for the earthquake, then they have the basic sustainability for almost any of the catastrophes that may befall us. But then we add the event-specific messaging, things like, make sure you have no floatable items in your yard, things like rain barrels, because one of the things that we hopefully don't miss in this here is an opportunity to be environmentally conscious, even in the throes of a possibly catastrophic event. But also pay attention to your news broadcast, but be prepared at home like we would any time in Los Angeles. Do we have the ability, does the household have the ability to sustain itself for multiple days? Streets may be blocked, people may not be able to get to work, people may not be able to get to school, so that's the basic messaging. The other thing is like I said, the conserving the water and also debris or potential debris. You have to be very careful with that messaging, with the potential debris, because we don't want to call someone's lawn furniture debris, but things that can float and occlude the storm drain system. But the core of the messaging is the information that we get from LA Department of Sanitation.
You mentioned the Notify LA system?
Yes, sir.
That's where folks automatically get a phone call alert.
Yeah.
Is every landline automatically subscribed to that, or do folks need to take a proactive step?
Great question, Councilmember. Every 911 capable landline we have access to. Mobile devices, we've had a campaign, we're encouraging all citizens of Los Angeles to register for free their mobile device. If you register the mobile device, you get the robocall, you get a text message and an email to your mobile device.
I think that's probably one of the more important things that council offices could help get the word out about, is to get folks, particularly in the hillside areas or in the low-lying coastal areas, wherever really, to sign up for that. Because folks don't all sit around the three major networks anymore or listen to just two radio stations for information. You could have someone who's just on the home shopping channel all day or just on BuzzFeed as a website and wouldn't hear information unless we do that. So that would be
We really appreciate that, council member, because and a lot of folks, their key means of communication is their mobile device.
Right. Or in Mr. Englander's case, his high-tech Dick Tracy watch. A couple questions for LAFD. I wanted to talk about your staffing capabilities, and I'm wondering, on days when we know there's going to be a heavy rain, I mean, El Nino is 3 or 4 months, there'll be days when we know there's going to be a heavy rain. Is there going to be any increased staffing at the neighborhood fire station level in areas that are prone to problems? Not just swiftwater rescue assignment, but...
Certainly, because we have that notification process where we're in those several days out in front, we have ready reserve engines that will be staffed up just like we do right now with the wildland response. So we are able to hire back staff. They're called 400 series engines and be able to augment those with 4-person staffing. They'll also be outfitted with all the swiftwater equipment. The brush patrols that we also use for basically scouting have the 4-wheel drive capability to go out and scout those areas. Those will all be staffed up. So we'll go in the augmented staffing mode well in advance so that the hires will be done and we'll be at a full, not only a full staff, but a plus staff, which would be probably 30-plus engines in addition to our regular staffing.
In March of 2011, there was some wet weather, and usually you guys get about 1,100 incidents a day. That day you had 2,600. What have you learned from that helps you make these deployment decisions for these heavy rain days?
There's some of the stuff that we've looked at post that year, those deployments, that we said we could mitigate some of that ahead of time and maybe reduce those numbers of responses. Like a lot of them are floodings where they have failed to clean out the roof drains. There's probably several thousand multi-occupancy dwellings that if they just clean the roof drains, we're not dealing with flooding and collapsed ceiling incidents. I can tell you personally on Balboa Boulevard between Burbank and Ventura, that night that it rained that hard, we had probably 14 people in my engine. So just blocking that off with K-Rail would have eliminated a lot of those incidents. If we can mitigate some of that stuff prior to that, it'll reduce that number that we have to respond. We can't control the amount of rain and the duration of rain. What we can do is get some of the outliers out of the way that we know they're going to be problematic, and at least for public outreach, let them put some personal accountability on the civilian population. Go check your drains out, check out things like Mr. Featherstone stated, to get some of that mitigated before the rains. We have some warning. It's not like a tornado or other event where we don't have any advance warning. We're going to have several days of this. I know on the teams, incident management teams, we use an IMET, and the IMET will give us really good information about the duration, length, and how far out. So we can start preparing several days out ahead.
I wanted to ask... I'm
sorry, IMET is instant meteorologist.
Thanks. I wanted to ask you, but maybe Mr. Featherstone as well, about our CERT teams and how they connect with all of this. I know that one of the issues that we have with resource allocation when there's heavy rains is LAFD personnel often have to stand by downed power lines for a very long time. No insult to DWP, but while DWP comes out, because there may be lots of downed power lines, and that's a resource drain. On occasion, I understand CERT has been used to sort of monitor those lines, and I'm wondering how well prepared CERT is for that, and then to Mr. Featherstone, what else we're intending on using CERT for in situations like this.
To speak to the CERT point, we had CERT volunteers manning the intersections and power lines. The general public basically ignored that. It wasn't until we got sworn on scene that we were able to stop that issue. So there are places where we can get them as far as non-emergency, where they don't put themselves in harm's way, but they are more of an outreach for us than I would as far as standing on. We would need somebody like DOT, somebody that the public would look at and recognize an authority figure to keep them away from them. The last thing I want, because what happens is a down power line, as probably all of you know, there's a reset piece that happens with that where it appears to be benign, and then it resets and it starts up again. So we want to make sure that we have somebody sworn authority figure that then maintains that presence around that. We don't want to bring a victim to an incident. So we will find places for CERT. We do have places for CERT. Again, post-SARE, we recognize and developed a very extensive plan to utilize them, but it wouldn't be around emergency stuff, resulting in utilities.
If I may add something, Councilmember, one of the council officers, I'm trying to remember which one yesterday, was saying that they have cleanup teams within their council district. And it'd be
Pretty much all do.
a perfect opportunity to integrate the CERT capability. They're organized, ready force. The other thing that we found success in the last couple of years is using CERT for some of the documentation and administrative processes during a crisis, because then that frees up either a sworn or non-sworn professional responder or supporter to actually get involved in a more critical task.
And last quick question to sanitation. Mr. Engel, you mentioned that trash can that sort of caused a flooding in an entire neighborhood. You reported that you've done a great job cleaning the catch basins and the storm drains. In case someone sees something as a rain is coming, how do you want them to report that? I know you have a new 24/7 system coming online. Is that where you want them to report?
Yeah. So I want to just echo we are ready, and we want the public to be ready. Together we can make a difference. So security stuff that can float and block drains are the biggest issue we have. And we're going to be looking at this, suspending the trash services if necessary and essential. But the call for us is the 311, but also there is LA Sanitation's hotline, which is 1-800-773-2489, 1-800-773-2489, and that will be going 24/7 starting with the rainy season. So if we have a predicted wet weather coming, we will go on 24/7. Our crews will be going on 12-hour shifts, working 24 hours, and we will mobilize all the staff. So if we have staff that are working on the sewer system, they will address sewer, storm drain, and they'll take care, and they'll be dispatched across the city. So moving forward and getting around the city would not be an issue. The only thing is, in anticipation of the storm, if any of the residents right now see something in the catch basin is a concern to them, please let us know. And we're going to work with the council officers to give us the feedback. But if the community sees a catch basin that they think there's a trash blocking it right now, please call us, and we'll be there to ensure it's working. We're going to be going around checking them, but feedback is great for us. We want that feedback, and we're ready to go and have everything ready to go.
Thank you. To turn it over to, but before I forget, I think that's another thing we should look at is deploying a 24-hour 311 during that period of time as well, and something that we should definitely look into, because 911 is going to be flooded as well, no pun intended. It's going to be busy. And, we don't want, if it's a less than life-threatening emergency, we certainly want people to be able to get through, particularly as they can report things that are blocking. And so debris basins and other issues of flooding, and we want that. So I think we should look at and ask Mr. Featherstone if you can get back to us about what that would take to get 311 operational during that kind of significant event. Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues, for arranging for this presentation. Very important, very timely. Just a couple of things. One is I do have a clean team that goes out 5 days a week, and so we're going to start paying very close attention to the condition of the storm drains in my district. So that's one thing. Two, are we planning to send out a sort of preparation notice in all of the upcoming DWP bills, and maybe when people pay online, a pop-up comes up, so this says prepare for El Nino. So that's one great way of letting everyone know, so that no one is skipped. And we all have implications in our own districts, so I look forward to arranging meetings with you. I'm concerned about the Los Angeles River, of course. We'll go out and we'll work on compelling any homeless encampments and individuals from coming out of the river like we have been doing, especially in advance of this winter. And also implications for the Silver Lake Bypass project that might be literally breaking ground right around the time, December, springtime. So I'm going to want to hear about that. And I know Mr. Rue will be interested in that as well, because we share Silver Lake. And Ron, I'm glad you brought up LA Deep. Well, you didn't bring up building and safety, but they have the geotech engineers and Bureau of Engineering, because landslides are of an enormous concern. And you all remember the last 2 weeks of 2004, the first 2 weeks of 2005, we had landslides across the city. We had FEMA emergency, and one of the biggest slides in the entire city was in the 13th District on private property at Forest Lawn, but an entire hillside basically collapsed into Verdugo Road and sat there for over a year with a lane partially blocked off. So I want to make sure that our geotechnical engineers in building and safety are brought into this conversation along with Bureau of Engineering for the stability of our hillsides especially. And then the question I wanted to ask you was, I mentioned 2004, 2005, and we had all, how much more prepared do you feel that we are now than we were then, just across the spectrum, in terms of emergency notification, in terms of emergency preparedness, et cetera?
I think we are significantly more prepared. We're a much more collaborative team. I think that as each day, each week, each year goes by, and I think that's a huge force multiplier for us here in LA. You don't see the division amongst disciplines or departments, or you don't see the siloing you would expect to see in a city this large and complex. I mean, the collaboration you see up here at the table in front of you wasn't mandated. We were already meeting and working on this ahead of time. So I think just the relationships are well beyond. Then the technology, our mass notification system is light years ahead of where it was in the previous wet weather. You were talking about the geotechs. We're going to replicate a process where we married a geotech with fire teams that went out, in potential areas. We do the predictive analysis in terms of hill slippage, but then we also do, in the moment, the geotechs actually ride out with the firefighters on their apparatus to actually make an on-site assessment of the viability of a hill. But back to your question, Councilman, I've been in this spot since '07, and prior to that with the fire department. As my colleagues have said, we're ready.
Terrific. And there are just a few, I think, most of the vulnerable areas in my district have been re-engineered in one form or another, except for a few. And I think some of those areas that are basically cliffs will need to be tarped in advance. But again, we'll meet with you to talk about those specific sites. But I feel confident after this presentation that we're certainly more prepared than we were 11 years ago, and that's a good thing. So,
and for 72 to 48 hours out of a credible notification from National Weather Service, the Emergency Operations Center will go to a level 1 activation. And as weather changes, as it becomes more precarious, we would go to level 2, and heaven forbid we'd actually go to level 3. But we'll go to level 1. Basically as a warm start for any credible threat in terms of a significant tsunami event. Significant El Nino event.
It's a tsunami of an El Nino.
Exactly.
and just lastly, the best preparation we can possibly have is for the citizenry to get directly involved. And so just getting the word out, and I think we'll all play a role in helping that, is the best prevention of all.
Yes, sir.
So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Mr. Kretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let me just put this out there, while not on the committee, just for question purposes, since you're sitting through this. But
Appreciate it. Are we doing much to actually prevent mudslides? Because we had conversation about removing the debris and the mud afterwards and how much more quickly we're prepared to do that. Are we looking at places where we can place K-rail? Are we looking at hillsides that we can tarp or encourage the property owners to tarp? I know in past bad times I've seen hillsides be somewhat damaged, and then after the third major rain they'll put up a tarp. Are we anticipating those types of things and preparing to take those actions right before this starts?
We have done it in the past with street services in conjunction with the Bureau of Engineering. I would expect that we will do the same this time. I can't speak to the engineering aspect, but I can say that we've set K-rails prophylactically in the past. I don't remember us doing much tarping.
Are we looking at doing that this time?
we're going to have actually a kind of hands-on meeting with fire department, us and the departments talk about it. So we'll bring that to the table. But we have debris basins, and those debris basins are areas that are known to have debris and stuff that washes in the foothills. And those are already, have been ready and have been prepared to accept the debris. And what we need to do, be ready this time if we have a lot of debris that we need to respond and remove the debris in anticipation of next storm coming. That's where the heavy equipment will come in to do that. So, but I think your point is well taken to ensure that in areas that we can protect to prevent erosion, that we do that. So we'll have that discussion.
And Councilman, I'll get back to you on the issue of pre-positioning K-rail and tarping.
I know certainly, although it's no longer in my district, Laurel Canyon has had a lot of damage in the past, and I've seen things happen, but generally it's been sometimes after some of the damage is already done. So to the extent we can identify the likely places and take more proactive action in the past, I'd encourage that. The one other thing I wanted to see is, we know this is going to happen. We know we're trying to distribute rain barrels. Is there any way we can make more of an effort, subsidize more rain barrels through DWP? And I know 10 years from now, probably every house and every apartment will have a rain barrel. But right now, if we could do that more quickly, we'd at least reduce some of the problem.
We have, by the way, every homeowner now can have up to 4 barrels and get a rebate for those. So that's available on Water and Power's website for that response. And I think to me is the future of being ready is to prevent runoff. For many years we've built the city, we've developed the city and put a lot of impervious surface. As we're moving forward and managing runoff in a way to capture runoff and hold runoff back, I think that's going to help us not only make our water supply more sustainable, but also prevent flooding and erosion and all these things that we're working on. But that's why investment in the future is critical to help us, be more resilient and sustainable.
And I think with the rain barrels, it's a fair statement that we offer them, but I'd say the general public is not aware of it.
Well, I don't even think that. I think it even go further, quite frankly, without having this discussion. I want to turn it over to Mr. Rue as well. But do we have people that will install them for free? That's the biggest issue. Getting them out there is one issue. Has anybody here ever installed one on this panel? Okay, I've installed several. Let me tell you right now, the average homeowner cannot install them. And the tools that come with them is a whole other issue, do not work. And so no matter which manufacturer you use, the cheap disposable cutter to go into your rain gutter will not cut through that rain gutter, period. And so for those of you who have ever tried to install one of these, I've got a mean set of tools, so I know how to do this stuff. But in any event, it is not. We need to ask contractors and others who are willing to come out either for free, or we can subsidize or give a credit back for somebody that has to pay for somebody to install. But I will tell you right now that the average homeowner cannot. And I challenge any of you to just go out and try it. I've done several now. I've got it down to a science, but it's a little more complicated than it
Are you available next weekend?
I'm available. Yes, I'm willing to do it. Turn it over to Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and in the interest of time, I'll try to make it brief. Mr. Featherstone, thank you so much for your offer and what your office is doing. And I think the last time we spoke, I think I'm going to take you up on your offer about the forums, and we'll probably need at least 3 in my district.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to piggyback on what the chair talked about and Councilmember Bonin and O'Farrell about the media and information disbursement plan with the text messages and all of that. If I could add, if we could have some sort of a pre-packet to distribute to neighborhoods, and whether it's council-specific or whether it's like 3 different versions, one for coastal, one for hillsides, one for the flatlands, a packet that we could help you in my office to distribute to our neighborhoods, some sort of, whether it's a one-pager or a book or whatever it is, with hotline numbers, a website, pickup locations for sandbags, just a whole I don't know if it's a magnet or whatever it is that we could help distribute. And the main question I have is, when do we start? Because I know it's still fire season, and as the chair pointed out, we don't want to start too early. So when are we going to start all this?
So November 9th is the citywide information kickoff. I mean, information's out now, and there's nothing to preclude any of our partner agencies or from putting information out now. But the concerted, focused city push on El Nino preparedness awareness will start November 9th.
November 9th. So that's the target date we should focus on. Okay, so if we could have some sort of a packet that we could help you. And I'm just going to mention these three things. I'm not going to ask it as a question. Urban forestry, thank you for all your work. I like what you talked about, down trees and looking into contractual services, because I know we had a down tree a couple of weeks ago in our district, and that's what, we know that because of the recession, you guys have been so understaffed, and it was, you got it done within a couple of hours, but it highlighted maybe some of our potential deficiencies, because that was just one tree. If we have multiple down trees throughout the district, you are going to be very much strained. So, as we talked about proactively, not just for urban forestry, but for all the other departments, whatever resources or whatever that it is that you need, let us know early so we can try to be proactive. We won't be able to address every single issue, but whatever we could do to help facilitate and give you the tools to properly respond to any potential catastrophic event, which hope doesn't happen, but so let us know in advance. And I'm sure Bureau of Sanitation is also looking into discussing alternative or additional trash days. And so if you could look into that, as well as if Bureau of Sanitation and Urban Forestry could also help identify, and if you let us know, we'll go and try to help as much as we can with our teams as well, and the neighborhood councils and everyone else about identifying locations for sandbag berms where they should be. So,
Excellent. Thank you for that. And I know Mr. Kretz has one more follow-up.
One real quick follow-up on urban forestry. I know we cut, obviously, a lot of our urban forestry folks, and they're elsewhere in the city family. On an emergency basis, is there any possibility that they could be pulled back from their other departments and utilized for a couple of weeks if we have hundreds of downed trees to help us get through it?
That's a very good question, Councilman. The Bureau actually, during these cases, as Jim has mentioned, we will go to a level 1 activation of our Bureau Operations Center. Even with light rain events, we'll activate our Bureau Operations Center. When we go into a Bureau Operations Center mode, actually the entire Bureau is available to handle emergencies as necessary. And to answer your question about where most of those people went, most of those people stayed within the Bureau. So most of those people with tree skills still remain in the Bureau. But the Bureau will respond to events as necessary. If we have more mudslides, then our resources will go towards that. If it's more tree-related, and probably in the early stages of rain events, it probably will be more tree-related until the ground starts to saturate and we actually start to have mudslides. Most of our emergencies in the early stages of these events, and any rain event, we have lots of trees come down. So to answer your question, we are prepared to deal with tree emergencies by reallocating resources as necessary to address whatever situation has the highest priority.
Great.
Well, obviously, having people with no tree trimming experience is a lot different than having people that are perfectly capable of jumping in and doing the work without any training.
That is correct, and as I stated, nearly all of those forces that were lost internally to the Bureau. So they're still available for urban forestry or the Bureau to use with their expertise in tree.
Very good.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And maybe that explains why you keep the chainsaw in the back of your car. So, okay. With that, on a serious note, this is extremely serious. I want to really, truly appreciate the city family and leadership coming together. I know you guys have been working together long before we've convened this panel and this meeting, and continue to learn from best practices, learn from regional and geographic challenges, certainly getting ahead of this storm, if you will, that we can disseminate this information to the public, I think we all agree is key. You're going to get back to us on deploying 311 for this situation, let us know. We're going to go ahead and receive and file this item, but send it on to the full City Council so they can ask questions and hear it as well. And with that, I also want to thank, a special thank you to my colleagues, both Councilmember Rue and Koretz, for joining us this morning on this as well. And the committee, though, will be just the ones voting to receive and file. We'll go ahead and do that as well. And thank you, very, very much to all of you. Colleagues, we do have two more items, and in light of the time and the ability to actually hear these in council as well, I would ask that item now 11 and 30 simply be approved and sent to the full City Council without objection. And we do have one card, I'm sorry, on item 11. Did you still wish to speak, Mr. Williams, on 11? I'm sorry? Did you still wish to speak on 11? Did you still wish to speak on 11? No, we're just going to send it to the City Council. Full Council. You can forget it. Okay. All right. Then we'll go ahead and approve item 11 and 30. And for those of you that stayed through this discussion that we're here for, 11 and 30, and 7, I'm sorry, and 7 as well. We're going to continue item 7 in committee. So 7 will stay in committee. 11 and 30 will go on to the full City Council. And that'll be the order without objection. Seeing no other items, we are adjourned. For those of you that stayed through all those 7, 11, and 30, at least you were, we're going to hear 7 back here anyway in committee at the next meeting. 11 and 30 will be in council, and I appreciate, it would probably was a good discussion to hear all of this anyway. What other? Oh, 3 and 8 were also approved. We had cards and that gentleman had left, so 3 and 8. Right, all the ones that were called special that were on consent, I apologize, are approved. So again, for clarification, 3, 8, 12, 15, 24, and 29 are approved, and then those folks had already left, and now we are officially adjourned. Okay, thank you. Sorry.